This video serves as a recap of what we learned in Scratch Club Week 1. So most of the students in our club were very familiar with Scratch, but in case you're watching this video and you are not, I will briefly explain the Scratch interface before I get into the heart of our lesson. So to get to the Scratch website, visit scratch.mit.edu, and when you get there, you can click Create to create a brand new project. The layout of Scratch is like a play, so you have a stage over here, and then you'll have sprites. A sprite is anything that you'd want to put in your play or in your program, which could be a table or an animal, a drum, a person or an animal. Anything your program needs would be a sprite. And the sprites can have several things. They can have scripts that make them behave different ways. They can have costumes, change how they look, and they can have sounds, which is what we're going to cover mostly today. So that's a little bit about Scratch. Scratch is a tool used to teach something called object-oriented programming, which is what we call our dinner table word of the week. Every week in our Scratch Club, we discuss a word that we take home to our dinner table and impress our family with the new thing that we learned. And so OOP, or object-oriented programming, was our word. So because Scratch teaches object-oriented programming to a certain extent, we made that our first word. And what object-oriented programming is it's programming centered around objects. And objects in object-oriented programming have things and they do things. So if I were to give you an example, start that over, sorry. An example of a fourth grade boy. He has a shirt, he has pants, he has shoes. He also has a voice and several other things. But those are things that the boy has. And there are things that the boy can do. He can walk, he can talk, he can type, and he can sing. And so those are some properties and things that a boy can do. And in Scratch, it's the same way. A Scratch object has sounds, and costumes are the things that it has, and scripts are the things that it does. And one thing, getting back to this example, is notice the boy, he has to have a voice before he can sing. It's that way in Scratch as well. The sprite needs to have a sound associated with it before it can make that sound. And the sounds don't behave on their own. They only behave when you put them in a script. So the script tells it when to make the sound and why it should make the sound. So the first thing that we learned, that we covered in our Scratch Club Week 1, we covered sounds. So if I get back to my Sounds tab for this sprite that I have, this sprite comes with one sound, the meow sound. I can play it by hitting the play button here. There are 3 ways to add sounds to my sprite. I can pick one from the library, so I can pick the birthday bells and hit OK. By the way, there are also music loops. Music loops are designed for repetitive play, so if you wanted to make the end of the music merge with the beginning of repeating the music again, a music loop would be good for that, like for background music. So I added birthday bells to my Scratch cat, and so now that sprite has 2 sounds. I can also record a sound. If I hit the microphone, it adds a 3rd holder for a new sound. I can record by hitting the circle button. If your browser asks you to, you have to allow the microphone to work. And now it's recording my voice. When I hit the square, it stops. Notice you have a visual representation of the sound. The line in here in the middle is going to represent like total silence, and these are going to be louder parts of the sound. The reason I mention that is because you can edit parts of the sound using these editing tools. And let's just play it back first. You have to allow the microphone to work, and now it's recording. So I stopped in the middle of my sentence, so I may want to get rid of that. So I can use my mouse, click and drag. I can hit edit and delete. And now you have to allow the microphone to work. It makes more sense. Not the best recording, but that's how you would do that. You can also, if I take the meow, I can select the whole meow, and I can do some other effects over here. Let's reverse it. So that's what a cat sounds like backwards. What I don't recommend is some of the students asked if they could copy and paste the sound over and over in this loop. And I would have recommended there's a better way to do that, and that would be to uh, record one sound and then use scripts to repeat that sound over and over. Just add several sounds to your sprite and then use code to play them in a particular order. Just because the editing tools can be cumbersome and you can't always tell exactly, what part of the sound you have selected. So the third way, I'll just mention it briefly, to upload a sound to your sprite is to take it from your hard drive or from another location where you have a sound file recorded. The safest thing that you should add to a sprite would be a sound that you record yourself. So if you have audio of your violin recital, then that would be something safe for you to upload. I would not upload your favorite Taylor Swift song because that would violate the copyright of that song. But like I said, the safest things are recordings that you own or that you know are safe to put into Scratch. So now that we've added some sounds, the next thing to do is to write a script so we can play them back. The first thing that any script in Scratch needs is an event. And the event tells the script, when do I run? And we'll go over that in another lesson, but just know that whenever you add anything in the script pane, it has to have one of these toppers from the event menu. So this script topper, I'll call it, will make this script run when my end user clicks the green flag or when the program starts. So I'm gonna click on the sound menu. There are two choices here. I can pick place the sound, and then I pick the sound because if you recall, I have three. I can pick the meow, and if I click on that header, it will run just this script. By the way, if I wanted to run all the scripts in my program at the same time, you would click the green flag over here. Clicking here runs just this piece of code. If I wanted the scripts to not continue running until after my sound was done, you would add this one instead. It's going to sound the same because I don't have any other scripts after. But I could put this one. There we go. There we go. So it didn't continue until the meow was finished. So that's essentially how you play a sound. The next thing I want to show you is a different way to make a sound, not on the sound tab, but you can play notes and drums. And the way you do that is the first thing I'll do is pick an instrument, although if you didn't, it would just make a piano sound. I'm going to pick the trombone, and then I'm going to drag over play note. As many notes as you want to play would be how many blocks you add. I'm going to pick a B under play note, and I'm going to pick an F. The beats here, if you're a musician, 0.25 is a quarter note, 0.5 is a half note, and so on. So if I click this, it plays kind of a familiar sound. To those of you who play video games, it means I did something wrong or I lost the game. So that's kind of a useful sound to make. The next thing I'm going to show you is playing a drum sound. Drums are pretty easy because the drum, which drum you hit, and the beats are in the same block. You don't have to use two different blocks. So I can hit a cymbal, and how about the cowbell? And if I play that, you hear both of them play. Sounds a little more interesting if you repeat it a few times. There you go. So, and drum sounds, by the way, I think are very useful as sound effects in your game. When you do something you shouldn't have done, when the ball goes out of bounds, whatever your game requires, playing a cymbal crash or a drum sound can be a nice sound effect. Even like, what the wood block may sound like a ball bouncing. So it's good to add sounds to your program this way. They're easy to add. So that does it for sounds. The next thing that we wanted to cover, we covered something called graphic effects. I'm going to get rid of my cat for now. And I'm going to add the same sprite that we added in our club, which was a bowl of Cheesy Puffs. So I pick the Cheesy Puffs and I click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of the effects of this bowl of Cheesy Puffs. I do that behind the looks menu, but first I need to add a header here. And I should say, while I am adding a header just to teach you good practices, while you're coding, you can just drag a piece of code over and you can run it all by itself by clicking on it. But your end user will never be able to use that code when they play your game. But today I'll show you in a minute a good use of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this one, change color effect by 25. And you can pick from the drop down and pick several other effects, but that's what it is. I'm also going to drag clear graphic effects over here because I'm going to need it in a minute, and you'll see why. If I click on this header, you'll notice my Cheesy Puffs are turning green and blue and crazy colors. That's what this code does. If I wanted to go back to the original picture that it came as, I would click clear graphic effects. So while I'm programming, I'm just going to put that there so I can hit it when I need to while I'm figuring out what I want to do. I won't go over these in too much detail because you can play with them on your own, but fisheye, if I click on this over and over, makes it appear to expand, and then I'm going to clear that. Whirl, I'm going to click on this over and over, makes it kind of twirl. It's kind of fun. I'm going to clear that again. Pixelate does that, and I think I'll let you finish the rest. Actually, I'm going to cover these last two. Brightness and Ghost look very similar, and they're great effects because if you are making a game where you want something to appear like it's disappearing, it's a great effect. So I'm going to add this baseball, and I'm going to say go back one layer. Oops, I'm on the Cheesy Puffs. Go back one layer because I want my Cheesy Puffs on top so you can see the effect. So if I change it, the brightness effect, and I keep hitting that, notice it's getting brighter and brighter, but it still has kind of a shape and it still covers up part of my baseball. If I clear that and I change it to the oops, I hit it, and I change it to the ghost effect, then see how it's kind of see-through. So two different similar ways to do almost the same thing. But it's a great effect if you are playing a game to make them change this way. So that handles graphic effects. Now let's do something fun with it and see if we can incorporate sounds as well. Let's add in a forever loop from the control menu because what I want to do is I want to make this bowl of Cheesy Puffs appear to expand in response to the sound of my voice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the looks menu and I'm going to try setting the fisheye effect to, under the sensing menu, loudness. Now first, before I do that, let me just click this box so we can see the loudness meter. So because my computer has a microphone, Scratch, and I enabled it when I hit allow, it can hear my sound that I'm making and it gives me a number to represent how loud the sound is. So if I add loudness here and I run that, now you can see the fisheye effect is happening in response to the loudness of my voice. I can add something to this. I can say, let's also set its size to be a little larger. 100% is the size that it is, right? If I wanted to add to that, I would use the plus sign here. And I would say 100 plus loudness. And then I would see that both happen at the same time. So it's getting both bigger and it's getting that fisheye effect. And if there isn't enough fisheye effect, you can add something in there as well, say loudness times 2. And actually, one of the students in our club made a great suggestion. What would happen if we made our Cheesy Puffs explode when they got to a certain loudness level? So in order to do that, what I would first do is let's stop that. And then I would go to costumes. I'm going to paint my own costume. That is approximately what I consider to be an explosion. Let's see if I can do this without wasting too much time. So this is my Cheesy Puff Explosion. Assuming that all of these are covered, I should be able to fill that. There we go. So that's my Cheesy Puff Explosion. I'm going to click on my bowl. And then I'm going to add another. I'm going to click and drag these off to get them out of the way. I'm going to add another script that executes at the same time. The whole time my program runs, I want it to keep checking all the time. What is, oops, I need an operator. Is my loudness greater than, and then I pick a number. I don't know, 40? Let's try 40. Then I'm going to, under looks, switch to costume 1. You know, let's rename that. It's really good practice. Under I, oops, wait a minute. I'm doing the wrong thing. To name, here it is. Name my costume. I'll call this Explosion. It's really important to name your variables when you're programming so that you can read your code and know what you're doing. So I'll change to Costume Explosion. So let's hit the green flag because I want these both to run. Oops, let's go back to costumes. You can either click on the, oops, let's stop. Let's start the game out with our costume. Cheesy Puffs. Okay. Now in response to my voice, oh boy, that did pretty fast. Let's also end all scripts so it stops. Okay, try one more time. Okay, so when I talk to my Cheesy Puffs, oh, they explode when they got past 40. The stop all just stops the program from running altogether. So that kind of wraps up, I think, everything that we covered in Scratch Club week 1. The other thing just want to mention is there's a really neat program. I'll go there now for you. Called Soundflower. You can either search for it. Yeah, there it is. Really fun program. It's kind of inspired today's lesson. Click allow. They have very similar code to what we did, but they did it in a really fun way. They have a fun background, and the background is changing in response to loudness, and the balls are changing their X and Y coordinates based on the loudness of my microphone. So if you're interested in taking this one step deeper, look at Soundflower and experiment with their code and see if you can reproduce it. To see their code, by the way, you click See Inside. So that completes what we covered in, stop that. That completes what we learned in lesson 1. In lesson 2, we'll learn the XY grid, and we're going to cover motion. So stay tuned.